Welcome back to another Spoilercast. This is sort of it's going to be releasing on both feeds, sort of TVGP and Picking Up the Pixels Spoilercast. I'm your host, Boston. Joining me is MusiM.
Hello.
And Mina.
Hi.
If you haven't listened to Picking Up the Pixels RPG Love before, this is our standard adventuring party for talking about RPGs. So if you listen to TVGP and you like this, go check out Picking Up the Pixels, pickingupthepixels.com. Where we just talk about RPGs and visual novels and some other stuff. But we're going to try and take Persona 5 and distill a 150-hour game into about a tenth of that time. No, like 1% of that time. We don't have 15 hours. So
this is part one of a 15-hour series.
Yeah, thank you for welcoming. This episode brought to you by... So, we're going to do our best. This game has so much in it, we're going to forget something. I apologize in advance. We're going to do our best. Let's, I think, to lay the groundwork really quickly, MusiM and I both finished this a couple months ago after its release, and Mina is much more fresh on what happened with Persona 5. You just finished it within the last couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Just very recent.
Yeah, so we're going to be leaning on some plot synopses here that all three of us have up, along with learning from a TVGP spoiler cast of the past, where we have some character name lists up. Trying our best here. All right, let's get started here with the prologue, which I think is probably one of my favorite parts of Persona 5, this in media res prologue, where it's, hey, the Phantom Thieves have landed in this casino and things have gone wrong and now you need to escape. And here's the first fight, which is a boss battle. I think that's such a cool intro, and I think it bypasses so much of the problems that people had with Persona 4, which is, Persona 4 is really great. You have like 3 hours until you're going to play the game, though. Which was the feedback from a lot of people playing Persona 4.
And in all fairness, like, that intro is great, but then you immediately go into that 3 hours.
Yeah. At least it pulls you in a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that it starts setting up pretty quickly is your main character, Joker, getting interrogated by Sai Nijima. And that's sort of the framing device for the whole game, which is, Sai says, you couldn't do this alone. Tell me who helped you. And it's, let's go to the past. And then you talk about how you took over this other dungeon. I don't think there's anything really too much else from the prologue, right? It pretty quickly goes into the first dungeon from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just basically lays out your character's kind of history and sort of why is he going to this town? Why is he living in this attic?
Yeah, above the LeBlanc, the coffee shop run by your really grumpy uncle?
No, he's just some dude who decided to help you out, which was kind of a telling point right off the bat when he was just like, he took you in and he didn't know you or anything about you and was like a friend of a friend, is how he put it. And so even though he was really gruff and kind of like seemed to not really want to do this, I immediately knew that this was going to be a really good-hearted person who was doing this because, and as I guessed correctly, he was once someone like you, someone who stuck his nose into other people's business and tried to do the right thing, and it often bit him. And he was trying to basically steer you onto a path that's less hard to walk on for a good-natured person.
Well, one of my favorite scenes with him is when you bring Morgana home for the first time. And he's like, I don't want a cat here. And then 5 minutes later, he's like, made a plate for her and like trying to help you with a name. Is like trying to make sure the cat's comfortable. Like you're sleeping on a bed of newspaper trash. But like, he's like, hey, is the cat okay?
Yeah, that whole, like, I just started playing it again just to remind myself on the game and played that scene last night. And like, that scene's especially funny because he's like, did you name her yet?
Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad. I wanted to name her.
Yeah, that's a really good scene. Leading up to the first dungeon here, the Castle of Lust, is basically your let's get introduced to your classmates for your starting party here. You get introduced to the controversial Ryuji, and An Takamaki, which for some reason they decided not to name her Anne like the Japanese version, but left it as An. Which are, I think those are two interesting characters because Ryuji is very much a hothead, but both of them have been abused by, who is it, Kamoshida? Yeah. The volleyball coach.
Yeah.
You find out that Ryuji had his knee broken, was it? Like one of his legs seriously hurt.
And Kamoshida got pissed at him and did it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then An and a bunch of other people were, let's say, sexually abused, to put that in maybe the kindest terms that the game delves much deeper into, by him. I think part of Persona 5's original, like their original marketing and the original stuff is sort of, comparing it to other Persona games, these are people that have had a lot of trouble, usually by no fault of theirs. They're not like, who's it, Kanji in Persona 4, where he's sort of rough and tumble, but, you know, not a lot of that, you know, was accidental. But in Persona 5, I like that almost everybody has sort of been kicked around a little bit, and they want to take revenge on the adults of the world. You know, like Ryuji says, the crappy adults.
Yeah.
And I like that they give you they make Kamoshida a villain really, really quickly.
Probably seems like one of the biggest villains of all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, can you get more despicable than like...
You can't... breaking someone's leg and putting advances on teenage girls and
making that one girl like try and jump off the roof.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
and that's a tough scene to rewatch, man.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really great because I think Persona 4 sort of tried to, you know, wade into the waters of, you know, what if the dungeon looked like their secret desires? I like that with Kamoshida's dungeon, you know, you have like machines spitting spiked volleyballs on kids, and like it very much looks like the torture chamber that he was trying to make the gymnasium. I thought that is probably one of the tightest dungeons from a design standpoint. Because it really does make it look like how he's treating those students. I don't know if I'm missing anything here other than Joker like ripping his mask off and Arsene comes out.
They really do that with the first few characters, right? Like I'm going to rip my mask and it's going to rip my face off.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the time they get to the woman with the motorcycle.
Makoto,
thank you. By the time they get, you know, to that point, she's just like, "Oh, my mask came off! Yay, motorcycle!"
Yeah, yeah. Well, even by Anne, it's like they didn't want to show the blood and gore on her. You know, like so. You do get introduced to Morgana in here, which
thankfully has a less confusing or less repetitive introduction than Teddy did. I like that Morgana right away doesn't like Ryuji, because Ryuji's always like, we're over here, we're the Phantom Thieves, yeah! And Morgana's like, shut the hell up, dude, come on. Like, we're trying to sneak. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, sneaking time, woo!
I've heard people go back and forth on whether they hate Ryuji or if they hate Morgana
hate
the
Morgana.
most.
How?
I've heard a lot of people, especially in my comment section, they do not like Morgana.
Wow.
And I always like Morgana, but people do bring up a point that he's oftentimes really harsh on Ryuji, but the second Ryuji like turns it back onto him, he really, gets set off by it.
Oh, right.
So,
he's like, oh, my wounded heart. Oh, Ryuji, how could you?
Exactly. It's very unbalanced the way he dishes out a lot of things at Ryuji, but he can't take it back.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that is the uneven translation we got here for the English language one.
I have heard that too.
Yeah,
I have heard that.
I wonder, that's a big part of Morgana's weirdness, is if you look at some of one of the biggest complaints that have been leveraged against Persona 4 is there's like 3 Morganas in the game. Because there's a tone problem. I wonder if some of that stems from that, where it's, the original was maybe a little bit more ribbing towards Ryuji, and this one is sort of like, Ryuji, you suck!
Yeah.
Ryuji's like, I like both Morgana and Ryuji. I don't understand why you would choose those characters as your character that you hate the most when Yusuke exists. But
Wait, Yusuke is the art one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Kitsune.
Yeah, but like Ryuji, my main problem with Ryuji is just he's the guy in real life where you're doing something you're not supposed to, and he's yelling at the top of his lungs about it. Like, I'm gonna go.
Hey, everybody, keep it down. We're sneaking.
Yeah.
We're the Phantom Thieves.
It's so mad. Like, they have actual story points that he causes because he's so freaking loud,
Yeah.
I wish I had looked those up to dish out those examples. But
a lot of them are like, you're in public and he's screaming about, here are the Phantom Thieves. And it's like, you guys are the Phantom Thieves. It's like, shit, come on, dude.
I think the biggest point is when he's just basically blurting it out on the phone while you're in the room with Makoto talking about Phantom Thief stuff, and Makoto's like, yeah, heard that.
That's some of my favorite stuff, when Makoto is starting to suspect you, like, as you're walking around town, she's just, like, on the corner, like, with a newspaper in front of her face, just sort of, and you can go up and talk to her, and she's like, oh, hey, you're here, that's so weird. I'm not following you, that'd be crazy.
I think Makoto's probably my favorite.
I don't hate either of the characters, but I know that those are the two that most people have a problem with, one or the other. Either for, like you said, Ryuji's big mouthness, or Morgana's unevenness and how he responds to Ryuji.
I don't know if I really hated anybody.
I was okay with them. I think if you watch my Let's Play, you might have heard me like get frustrated with Ryuji when he's shouting about, I'm a part of the Phantom Thieves, like that. Like, I probably was like, God, just be quiet.
I think the only character I didn't like was probably Akechi, but I feel like when you're introduced to Akechi, he's always like, hey friend, how's it going? It's like, I don't trust you. Like, from the moment you open your mouth, there's something weird. I don't trust you at all.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what we should talk about before we get into everything else? When I first booted up the game, the voice that was Igor, I immediately said, I was like, why is his voice being thrown into like some sort of audio mix and just garbled? It sounds terrible.
I'm Igor. It's like, wait, you're not.
It's like,
who changed this voice actor?
Bad.
So you should go back and listen to the last PUP episode where you brought up the voice actor change. And listen to me and Boston's reaction to
MusiM and I are chewing our tongues, just like, oh, she's so close. Oh my God, she's so close.
I knew that like the Japanese voice actor, the original one, had passed away.
Right.
And that they had to recast him. So I wondered if, did they recast for the English side as well to kind of like
it's like
make
a Solid
sound
Snake
like the
thing.
Japanese
It's just
one?
across the board.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if like, they were like, since the Japanese one sounds so different from the original one, we have to make the we have to make the English one sound so different from the... Because that makes sense if you think about
that was
Persona
my thought
4.
too. Yeah, and then by the time... It's sort of funny because, like, the first time he talks to you, it's the famous, like, welcome to the Velvet Room. And it's also like, welcome to the Velvet Room. It's just like, that's... this is not...
Someone pointed out that he doesn't say that in this one. He says, welcome to my Velvet Room.
Oh, interesting.
Instead of welcome to the Velvet Room.
So, yeah, like, since we're talking spoilers, like, he turns out to be the bad guy, which is a really great turn when real Igor comes out and it's the real voice. And it's like, hell yeah. Woo! Welcome back, Igor. What's up, dude?
It's a real good moment. Like, I even remember when I started up the game, like, Susie doesn't necessarily like these games, but, like, she even went, man, I don't like the new voice actor they got for that guy. Why did they change it so much?
Someone pointed out, like, they were surprised that I didn't pick out that he said, welcome to my Velvet Room, but I was like, you know what? In that moment, I was thinking so hard about this voice. I was like, something is wrong at this point.
I mean, like,
I do not like it.
You just watch the cool intro and you hear listening to all the cool music and you see the cool interface. Like, you're just dazzled by the bright lights.
Well, and like, now that I've been playing it through recently, like, all your conversations with Igor, he's talking about what you can do for him. Like, it's never the you at the center of your journey kind of conversation you're used to.
Well, and it's interesting, too, because it's sort of more adversarial than it's ever been. Caroline and Justine are your jailers, and, they have you locked in a cell until, hour 150, where you finally get to break free and sort of shake everyone back to life and go fight an angel of some sort.
I've broken us off the path of the chapter discussion.
No, that's okay. I mean, like... We don't have 4 hours to record this, so we want to make sure we cover as much as we can. I think the only other thing I wanted to talk about with Kamoshida's dungeon, which I guess I didn't realize was called the Castle of Lust, which is a great title, is his boss battle has you... Like some boss battles in this game, has you sending one party member out of the fighting party to go do something else. And I thought that was cool because you never really did that in a Persona game before, and it's when they give you that option, it's sort of like, well, I don't want to send anybody off. Like these are all my important people. Like I need them to high five to someone else when we pass the baton.
It's such a struggle too, because number one, I found out that you can't really send Anne out because he will notice very quickly that she's gone.
Yeah.
So the best person to send out is Morgana, but at that point, Morgana is your healer.
Yeah.
So if you didn't make a healer persona, it's really hard.
Yeah.
So
I would send out Ryuji.
Ryuji, yeah.
He's very athletic.
Yes.
So, a couple things on that. I got all the DLC packs over Christmas.
Okay.
I bought them on discount.
Nice.
The personas you get from that, once you get to a point where you can summon from your book, they're all free to summon the first time. And since I'm on my second playthrough, like, I summoned a bunch of, like, you get, like, some of them are at level 20, and then you also have, like, Messiah or whatever it was, the ultimate version from Persona 3 or 4, whichever that game was, at, like, level 90. So, like, I have him in my party.
Oh, my gosh.
Just one-shotting bosses.
That first boss.
Yeah. I haven't quite gotten to that boss yet. I got, like, halfway... I don't even know that I'm halfway through the dungeon. I got to, like, the second or third safe room and did that. But, like, before we get too far beyond the beginning, and I know... I'm pretty sure I've said it before, and I'm sure other people have said it before, but I just can't emphasize how good that intro starting point in Tokyo is. Like, in terms of feeling downtrodden, in terms of, hey, go find your school through the subway system. Like, all of that.
It's terrifying the first time you go through. I forgot about that. I played through this game twice to get the platinum. And, like, even the second time, I'm just like, they're like, go find your train. It's like, you gonna give me a hint? Like, I don't... Nope. I'm used to video games being like, just follow this line. It's like, no, go find your train, dude. Get to school. Don't be late. It's like,
I was stressed out. I remember just, like, looking at all the signs, and I'm like, where am I supposed to go? I do not know these stations.
Yeah, that's a great... Well, I'd like to... You know, they did this in Persona 4 a little bit, but I felt like it worked better in Persona 5, where it's very much like you have to stay in your house at night. Like you don't have permission from your guardian to wander around at night. So during the day, you got to find out where the laundromat is. You got to find out where all the stores are. You know, you got to unlock all these fast travel points around the city to get all these other places. It doesn't hand all this stuff out to you. No one shows you around because, you know, you're the bad kid that went to jail. You know, no one wants to be your friend. They're not going to show you around town. They don't even want to sit next to you at class, you know. I felt like, MusiM brings up a good point. I felt like they do a really good job of making you feel that isolation at the beginning, that you really are this sort of pariah, this outcast that has been dumped into the school, and everyone's like, oh man, we got to have the kid that went to juvie? Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
And the muttering that happens in the school halls when you're walking around, where people are just basically bad-mouthing you.
Yeah, I heard that kid went to jail.
Oh, don't talk to him. I heard he has that condition where he flips out and goes violent.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they mentioned that you carry a knife with you or something.
So many of that stuff really gets blown out of proportion.
I almost wish they could have carried that whole kind of tension and find it yourself throughout the game, but I understand mechanically it just wouldn't have worked over that stretch of time.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing mechanically that we didn't touch on here yet for the end of this is basically you get all the way to the boss and you find where they're keeping their thing, you know, their secret desire. And then I totally forgot about this thing where you go back into the real world and you deliver them a calling card from the Phantom Thieves, and you say like, "Hey man, we're coming for you. We're gonna get your heart." And then that makes them freak out. And it probably one of my favorite animations in this game is when they get that card and that meter fills up, and like that whoop whoop whoop, like that dungeon meter fills all the way up to 99 or 100%. And then you go and you go punch-size them. But that's such a cool way of turning, you know, what Persona 3 and 4 did with the phases of the moon and then with the weather. It's such a cool way of sort of managing your time, because you don't even have to send it as soon as you get out of the dungeon. You can go do other stuff and decide maybe a couple days later to go deliver it and then hop into the dungeon after that. I think it's a lot better way of saying like, all right, rain is coming up, or you know, we're gonna have fog on this day, so you have to do X or Y then.
I do agree with you on that. Being able to decide when you want to do it, having like a final deadline of like it must be done before you get expelled from school, of course, but letting you choose when you want to do it based on your preparedness to do it, and then knowing that you can just ride out the rest of the time without having to worry about fighting a boss.
Yeah, because it makes
really nice.
It makes it easier, especially when you go down to Mementos. You know, like there's a rainy day. It's like, all right, I need to go level up. I want to go to Mementos. I want to go, you know, grind some random stuff, get some demons to fuse and do all that stuff while it's raining. And then you don't have to go to the dungeon today. You don't have to go do any of that other stuff. I thought that was really great.
Yeah.
The next dungeon is the MusiM of Vanity. This is the Madarame dungeon. The thing I remember from this one, more so than hopping in and out of paintings, which was kind of a fun puzzle, was the cool interaction between, you get all the way through the dungeon that you can, you know, it hits you with a blocker where it's like, here's a door we don't know how to get through, but we've seen this somewhere. So you go break into that door in Madarame's house, and then it opens up in the dungeon, which lets you finish the dungeon. I thought that was a cool play between, you know, hopping back and forth from the dungeon and the real world to sort of bypass that stuff. Yeah.
It would have been nice if Madarame was like, he was evil, but like if he was anywhere near as evil as Kamoshida.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was a little bit. I'm glad that Kamoshida was the first villain you got to fight, because it really set a tone of like, we're doing the right thing by doing this. Madarame seems so much less of a villain compared to Kamoshida, though, that it was kind of startling. The one thing that kind of drove me insane about an interaction, and this is just, it's a minor thing that drove me insane, was how heavy-handed we seem to push Anne towards being a nude model for Yusuke. She had just come off of the whole Kamoshida sort of like abuse, harassment. Yeah. And I felt it really strange when another character being introduced was basically saying, no, I'm going to make these blackmailing demands that you have to be nude for it. And I went to art college, so I have drawn people nude, but they were consenting people, and it was required for class. This was someone who clearly was not really wanting to consent, and even a blackmailing sort of approach. And the response that Ryuji and the main character give her is like, just do it.
Yeah, it's like
you have 3 options, and just do it. You have to. No choice. And it's like, I really hated that moment, because I was like, she just got out of that situation. Why are we making this okay?
That's been one of the complaints that I feel like. This game came out in 2017, and I think that's been one of the fairest criticisms, that maybe that it was clearly meant for humor, but lands so flat and lands so wrong that, there's a lot of stuff that, the treatment of trans characters, the treatment of gay characters, that especially at the beach and, the other town, are woefully out of date, like a decade out of date. And I feel like this is sort of, I feel like that criticism has been fairly leveraged against Persona 5, just saying like, look guys, Atlas, you gotta get with the times. Like, Persona 4 had a lot of these problems, but that came out on the PS2, and it was sort of a little more understandable, because that was like 10 years ago. You gotta get with the times here. Like, this is, you're supposed to be, you're trying to tell a progressive story that isn't progressive in some fairly major ways.
I could tell that it was meant to be a joke, but I think what would have been better handled in this case is that your characters refuse it, and then after they leave, they say, we'll come up with something, like just something to like be like, we're going to figure out a way.
Yeah, there's
to make
some
this
other
work
plan.
We're going to think of a plan to do, and then I would have been much better with that situation. I would have been like, that's messed up, Yusuke. But I would have been like, oh, okay, the group is at least going to think of a sneaky plan for the situation. But instead, the team kind of comes off as like, just do it. We have no choice. And I feel like that's such a bad way to handle that.
Although the scene where she comes out and she's wearing like 50 different sweaters is really good.
Hilarious. And like I said, I wouldn't have minded at all had they come up with a different way of responding to that. But it's a minor complaint that bugged me in only the moment. Yeah.
I think we were talking about the comparison between Madarame and the first villain, whose name I have already forgotten. Kamoshida, thank you. Whew. It's getting late for all three of us. I think the big thing that Madarame did was he stole a painting and set it as his own. Basically, like comparatively, that's
he also ruined lives by
he's like stealing all this
pupils' work
and like dumping them in the gutter.
Yeah, and then if people tried to like disobey him or whatever, he would basically make it so that way they could never paint again.
Yeah,
he'd get them blacklisted so they wouldn't be able to get anywhere in the art world, and that is the thing that the story in this game does so well is present corrupted systems that everyone lives by and lets happen. Because like one of the powerful things in Kamoshida's deal is like when you found out, oh, no, everyone realizes that this volleyball team is getting the crap physically beat out of them.
But they don't care.
Yeah, because they want they want the prestige of
the fame and the prestige, and people are benefiting from it, and
that's just kind of a constant a constant thing that happens throughout this game. I think less so with Madarame. Like, he's obviously abusing a system and such, but I don't think it was made obvious that the people around him know. But I think in terms of most of the rest of the villains you fight, aside from the one who's not actually a villain,
right?
Like, those are all about systems in place that are being abused that everyone is complicit in.
Yeah, and I think that sort of plays into the Phantom Thieves going after the next target, the Kaneshiro. Is at this point they sort of make the change of, we're not going to wait to find someone, we're going to go find someone that's bad. And that's sort of the change, and they say, well, it's this guy, he's selling drugs, and he's a mobster and all this. And I think from a dungeon design and from gameplay perspective, the bank is probably one of my more favorite ones. I liked, finding the keywords and, breaking down the systems and going through that. I thought that was, especially the end where you're sort of turning the vault to try and get to the middle part. You fight a giant piggy bank at the end with the fly on the top. That was pretty cool.
I like the design of that dungeon because everything seemed to unlock. Like, you started in one area, but there was a lot of locked doors in that top floor. But as you explored the deeper floors, you were unlocking doors to get back to that main area. So it was like a lot of it fed back into the main area until you eventually unlocked the elevator to go down to that big lock area.
Yeah.
The design was very nice.
Yeah. MusiM, you were going to say something?
I don't remember. I would add on to that maybe, though, that like I think the map system for the game was really good because of this very thing. Like, they were very good about putting red scribbles on doors that you tried that didn't work and feeding back around, which is, I think they did a little bit of that in Persona 4. But the level design in this game, for the most part, I think is fantastic. Like, it very much feels to me like they... It honestly feels like it started with Tokyo Mirage Sessions. Like, they said, what if we made these levels, these weird, complicated puzzles? But Tokyo Mirage, I think they missed the mark in a lot of places, because those levels are really not fun to go back to. But I think on this one, just even running around Kamoshida's, like having the, hide behind furniture and dash around and ambush the enemies and all the various weird personalities you meet around the dungeon and to unlock it, I love. So
well,
I'd completely forgotten about the bank until you brought it up just now. That's a great level.
Well, it's cool too because unlike Persona 3 and 4, the shadows change their shape depending on which dungeon you're in. Like, these ones are, guard dogs and, security guards, and in the casino level, they're sort of casino floor workers and waitresses and stuff. It's instead of them being this amorphous blob that they were in some of the previous games. I think that's cooler that you get to have these shadows that look like they belong in there, that you get to ambush and jump on, which is just such a cool animation. It never really got old. You do get introduced to Makoto, and her super cool motorcycle. Makoto's probably the character I used the least in the game, unfortunately, until maybe my New Game Plus. But
I swapped her in only to do nuke damage if there was like a ton of monsters that kept popping up that were weak to nuclear.
Yeah, like the final boss.
Wow. I used her a bunch. Like, she's the one I romanced first. But then again, nice. That was, like in the podcast, I did that because I was upset at the person interrogating me and figured out she had a sister. And I'm a terrible person because I just wanted that moment during the interview where I was like, yeah, no, I hooked up with your sister. What you gonna do?
Right. I romanced on because I thought...
I romanced on too.
I thought she was so cool. Like, in sort of a similar way that I usually romance, like I romanced Chie, and Rise in Persona 4, because they're cool characters, they're cool ladies.
I've romanced on And half of it was because I thought she was really cool looking. I liked her design. The other half of it was early on someone told me that, like, of all the people that you can romance in the game, like, a lot of people don't romance on in their Let's Plays.
Oh, huh.
And I was like, well, you know, I'll make mine a little different and I'll pick on.
Yeah. What do you guys think about the whole being able to romance the adults in this one?
It was... I mean, like, some of it was weird in a way that I'm like, I'm not uncomfortable about it, but it sort of didn't make a lot of sense. Like, your teacher, I thought
the teacher's the only one that I wouldn't have done.
Yeah, I didn't do that one. I went sort of all the way to the end, and on both playthroughs I said, no, I'm okay. Because it was a little weird that she's, like, cleaning your room, but sort of not, and it's a romance thing, and it, like, there's a maid outfit. It just sort of,
yeah,
it was odd.
That one tiptoed too far for me too. I avoided romancing her, but
she had a great storyline for her.
I mean,
S-Link.
The other ones I still wouldn't have done either because I wasn't a whatever, but I think the teacher one's the only one that I was like, this is a little too intimate.
Oh, the other one's the doctor, right?
The doctor, the fortune teller girl, and the reporter. So that's Chihaya, the fortune teller, Chihaya Mifune, Oya, the reporter, and Takemi, the doctor.
I liked the story of the doctor. I liked this, like, her story, I felt like tied more into the main theme of the game than the other three adults that you had a confidant with, because it was really much like, I did the right thing and I got screwed by someone who got greedy, and then by the end you sort of expose it. And the reporter had something sort of similar, but I didn't feel like it was as strong. But
the reporter was being her companion who did like some reporting or whatever got killed or
some investigative.
Man, I'm gonna butcher my memory on this because that's the one that I did very early on.
They were like reporting some kidnapping or missing person, and it went wrong, and the other person disappeared.
Maybe she didn't get killed. I don't remember. But anyways, her boss and everyone was trying to keep her from, like, digging into it or whatever, and they wanted to sweep it all under the rug, and she was having to, like, make basically these articles on the Phantom Thieves while trying to do her real sleuthing undercover.
Yeah, I feel like that was maybe one of the weaker ones. I feel like the weakest one for me was probably the Shogo player. Hifumi, was it?
Hifumi Togo? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I felt like hers could have been cooler, other than, like, my mom wants me to do this, and I kind of don't want to.
I heard that she originally was supposed to be one of the Phantom Thieves, that she was supposed to be queen, which makes a lot of sense.
Smart, yeah.
Because she would have had to do something along with the lines of playing board games sort of stuff, so queen would have worked. But they ended up basically taking... I guess maybe they didn't have enough time or something, and they just gave that to Makoto.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen all the social links. I'm loosely familiar with them, though. The teacher one, as awkward as a lot of that is, her story, I don't know the end of it, because I got to, like, where I only needed one more to finish her quest out or something like that, and then lost the opportunities. But, like, the whole... One of her students, like, committed suicide or died or something, and her parents blamed her for it, and now she's basically prostituting herself as this maid to try and make up money for it. Like, it
was actually a really good story, because she stuck her neck out for a troubled student that was really starting to improve after she was giving him a lot of one-on-one attention, and he was stopped acting out, and his grades were starting to rebound, and then he died, I think in, like, a car crash or something.
Yeah.
And then his parents blamed her, saying, well, you caused him to kill himself. She's like, well, no. She got fired from her job, and they were blackmailing her. and that she was doing this maid service. And then by the end, it turns out really well because you go into mementos to change their heart. And then once you do, the blackmailing stops. And she's like, okay, cool. Thanks, that was really great. Like, I know you did it, right? Wink, phantom thief. And he's like, what?
Yeah, I actually maxed that one out because someone told me in my comment section that I would really like the benefits of maxing that social link out. The sooner the better, was someone said. And I was like, okay, let me add her to the list. Because I originally was avoiding her like the plague. Because I was like, I don't even want to put this on my channel.
Too weird. No, thank you.
Too weird. And then
it's like the nurse in Persona 4, where it's like,
Yeah. But, I mean, her benefit was that if you went to Mementos or whatever, or basically you get back from doing anything in the other world, she would give you a back massage, and suddenly you can go out at night and do whatever. And that was... They were right. That was really worth doing because I was able to, like, do a lot more stuff at night.
Yeah, and my New Game Plus, because of that, I basically had 2 months at the end of the game where I had nothing left to do. Like, played all video games, read all books, and I was like, all right, let's just go to sleep, I guess.
Did you guys max Togo out? Hifumi?
Mm-hmm. I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember. She gives you a lot of battle benefits, doesn't she?
Yes, she does. She gives you the ability to swap party members mid-battle.
Oh, right. That was hugely helpful for the optional boss, Caroline and Justine, who were incredibly difficult.
Oya was the worst one. I wish I didn't waste time maxing her out.
Oh, yeah.
She was the reporter.
Yeah.
Because she did things to lower the amount of that bar filling thing or whatever.
Yeah, like every time you get caught.
Stupid.
That's not...
Gosh.
Did you guys fight Caroline and Justine as the actual boss?
No.
That was so hard. You basically fight them 3 times inside the boss battle because they keep, as part of the battle, they keep healing themselves back up to full health. It's ridiculously difficult.
Do they do a thing like previous Shin Megami Tensei games, and I think Persona games too, will do a thing where if you go in equipped with certain things, then the boss will one-hit kill you? Did they do that in this?
No,
that was Elizabeth. She did that like crazy. That was... Whoa.
Yeah, they gave you a good fighting chance in this one. They made it pretty fair. Just, you sort of had to be ready for a fight. All right, we're sort of running out of time here, so let's only like halfway through, but let's sort of
next boss.
Blow through some of these dungeons here. Pyramid of Wrath.
Hated this one.
Yeah,
probably my second least favorite. Cool boss battle with shooting down the Sphinx with the gun. Futaba is a great character.
Yeah, I loved Futaba.
Yeah,
but her dungeon, you're right. Actually, it wasn't my least favorite. It was just my second least favorite.
Yeah.
I just remembered. No, I felt it was so bland. Like, the other ones felt exciting. Like there was so much.
It was very long.
Long, and it just felt a lot of same stuff was being seen. Whereas, like, Makoto's bank was like, you know, it was clearly you were going through different hallways, and the bank had, like, a real theme.
Yeah.
And I mean, Yusuke's was so colorful and different, and obviously the last one was just, that was what it was.
Yeah.
But Futaba's looked a lot of the same no matter where I looked.
Yeah.
You're just always moving down that same hallway, and then you go off to the side and do something and come back.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Like, for such a great setup to a character, it's such an entertaining character, it really is a shame that they kind of dropped the ball on that dungeon design.
Yeah, it could have been like a cool hacking thing where you're like hacking your way through the dungeon. It was very weird. That would have
been way cooler. Like, and I remember too, in like, I would hit certain rooms and be like, oh, I'm going to have to do this in that room. But I couldn't do it yet because I hadn't hit this whatever story point I needed to instigate that puzzle. And that was, I remember, fairly frustrating.
The next dungeon is by far my least favorite one, the Spaceport of Greed. The one, you know, you go to Hawaii, which was sort of fine. Principal Kabakawaya, that guy, the principal dies suddenly. You get blamed for it, and you're chasing down the beauty thief, which is, unsurprisingly Haru. Which, as soon as you see her, it's like, oh, it's Haru Morgana. It's those guys.
I feel, of all the characters, I feel the worst for. Haru takes the cake on, just getting the worst of everything. One, her father dies, and even if he was a scumbag, that's still her father.
Yeah.
And clearly her father was being, manipulated pretty hardcore. And on top of that, you have her terrible fiance, who is, the worst.
As an arranged marriage.
And if you think about it, if you don't finish Haru's path long enough, she's going to get married to that sleazebag.
Yeah.
And I had to finish her route, and I've got to tell you, for someone who is... I stayed true to An, but man, did you guys finish her social link?
Mm-hmm. I finished all of them.
I don't think I did.
Okay.
I think I missed half the party, and I think she was one of the ones I got very close to the end of and did not finish.
When you tell all the other girls, I just want to be friends, most of them take it really well. They either play off like they weren't ever going to ask you anyways, or they're just like, oh, whatever, It was a joke that I brought it up. Haru does not take it the way that I would have wanted it to happen. She is clearly interested in you long before this gets brought up, and then when she brings it up, she's clearly very clearly asking you, whereas the other girls, you could have been like, well, maybe they're not asking, maybe I'm making too much of a presumption here. Haru's clearly stating she wants to be with you. So when you let her down and you're both sitting on the couch next to each other, she kind of stands up and turns away from you, and in a very shaky voice basically says that she needs you to leave.
Wait, no,
she wants to be alone.
Because I saw that scene. That's right.
Oh, that's right. I felt terrible. I was like, I need to stop recording because I feel like a monster right now. Whoa. So to add insult to injury, she clearly likes you throughout the entire game, whereas I don't think the other girls give indications of that. I never felt that, but she brings it up kind of throughout the game, and it kind of started stinging in a bad way, and I was like, why did you introduce her last?
Right.
Why is she the last one? Because now I feel rotten.
Yeah.
Oh, terrible. Poor Haru.
Let's keep moving here to the next dungeon, the Casino of Envy. Probably one of the more interesting, and
I like this one.
Definitely different from a going through. You're always aiming to earn money and kind of make your way through it. Instead of primarily getting a bunch of casino chips on your card. This is also the dungeon where Akechi is with you and fighting alongside you, which is interesting. That's an interesting character design for it being in the dungeon.
So I know this is a little late, but with Akechi, I on the first time we get introduced to him way back when, on my recording, I actually caught immediately that he talked about pancakes.
Right.
And I was like, I thought Morgana was the only one who said something about pancakes. How come he heard that? And then I was like, you know what? It's probably a translation error. Probably a mistake.
No, she figured it out.
Because it's even in the episode, I pause and I go back into the chat log and I'm like, yeah, nobody said pancakes besides Morgana. Weird translation error. And I moved on. But that's all I wanted to say here.
I think at the end of the space station is, because I didn't catch the pancakes thing, but whenever they show Goro Kachi in his evil outfit at the end of the space station is when I'm like, okay, that's got to be him. I mean, there's no
it's like that's
in the game
the only one. Yeah.
But
after you clear out the casino, a lot of stuff happens pretty quickly. This is basically where the main character decides to kill themselves in front of Akechi to sort of catch him in the act and have everybody believe that he's dead. But wait, it happened in the the Phantom World, which was actually pretty cool because they do this whole thing where you're sort of piecing together memories that you forgot of you talking to Morgana and trying to trap Akechi, and you successfully do, switching smartphones and jumping in and out of the Phantom World or whatever they call it, and it's probably a lot more complicated than we can get to on the show. It was pretty cool, though.
I think it was good that they set it up beforehand. There was a lot of things, like they pointed out, oh, look at this is the prosecutor's office. Oh, look over there. And they kind of gave you hints on, like, what's going to happen. So that way later when they do that whole reveal that you did get a lot of this stuff laid out for you, which is always good storytelling when they make sure to include little bits of facts like that. Because obviously they omitted the conversations with you and Morgana.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it leads to some cool stuff where the game really boxes you in for quite a while because you're supposed to be dead. You can't go to school. You can't really go out. You can't wander around, which, you find out who the true victim is, who the true, the bad guy is, Shido. And so you have to investigate the diet building while you're supposed to be dead, which leads to a lot of cool, like, let's see if we can get in. What's the secret phrase to get in? Oh, the cop saw us. Let's run away. Pew! There's some of that cool stuff. It's unfortunately followed by easily the longest JRPG dungeon I have ever suffered through, which is the Cruiser
of Pride. My least favorite.
Yeah.
This one takes number 1 as my least favorite dungeon, period.
Unbearably long.
They could have cut down so many of these stupid cruise ship hallways by, like...
But now you're a mouse.
Half. Oh, no.
Oh, God, I forgot about that.
Now you're big. Now you're tiny. Yeah, it's a lot of cool ideas, but they could have genuinely cut half of that dungeon off, and it would have been way better.
Yep.
And I guess...
Since there's, 2 or 3 dungeons after it or something?
2 more, yeah, because, here's where the game starts getting kind of long. You fight, 2 or 3 boss fights against Akechi, all of which are kind of cool, especially as he just goes insane. Great voice actor there for that stuff, too. When you, in Persona 4, when the bad guy turns, I'm not going to spoil Persona 4 at the same time, when the bad guy turns... the voice actor basically turns yeah, I'm evil. But in this one, the voice actor just gets unhinged, and I think it turns really cool. Then Persona 5 gets real weird. Because you start diving deeper into the metaverse, and then you start going to the bottom of Mementos. Sort of as Morgana gets weirder and weirder, because he or she is trying to figure out what they really are. This is sort of where I forget a lot, because a lot of it is fake Igor saying, well, you're doomed to die, I guess, you failed, so let's go fight a Holy Grail. What's the big stuff I'm missing here, Mina? Because you've played this much more recently.
This is very fresh in my mind because this was where I picked back up. So they find out that people are just basically not changing, and that they have to go and fix everyone, the whole world, by going into the deepest part of Mementos and stealing basically the heart of everyone there,
right?
Which they presume will destroy Mementos and everything. So you dive into there, and when you dive in, the first thing you notice is that people are willing to be there, people want to be there, and all the trains and stuff that you had seen earlier were driving people to this place where they are willingly being locked up. When you get to certain floors, you run into the people that you change the hearts of, like Kamoshida and etc. And when you talk to them there, they too are willingly wanting to be there and accepting, basically giving up on everything and letting the world control them.
Mm-hmm.
or the greater power, being prisoners. So you realize that maybe you haven't been doing the right thing by changing hearts, if this is the result. And as you get deeper and deeper, your characters start getting a little more afraid that they've been going about the wrong way, until they reach the very bottom, where they run into the Grail and the literal thousands of people in prisons all around you as you have to battle this Grail. Well, they're all yelling to stop hitting our treasure.
Yeah, like to feed it.
Knock it off. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where you sort of have the reveal for Igor, because when you can't beat it, Igor's like, okay, I guess you lose. Sorry.
The craziest cutscene ever, too, when you get thrown out of that Grail and all your party members start disappearing and
yeah, like they melt
vanishing
into the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was some interesting stuff, because throughout you strengthening your confidant bond with Caroline and Justine, they keep thinking like, I keep hearing like a voice, and eventually they remember who they are, which is, they smush themselves back into one person. And then you find out that Igor was just a doppelganger, wasn't the real Igor, and Morgana is the original trickster who was trying to reach someone who would help them expose Igor and save Caroline and Justine. And then, basically there's this huge long scene where you go to talk to everybody and you say, like, we can do it. And they're like, yeah, we can. And they transform. And then, like it usually happens with Persona 5, or with the Persona games, there's yet another dungeon after this, and it's super long, and at the end of it, you fight an angel that has sort of appeared.
Yeah. I feel really bad because I didn't write this down. Somebody wrote in the comment section what this god was, but apparently he was like maybe a boss from an SMT game or something that I
wasn't
literally
it Metatron or something?
No, it begins with a Y.
Yeah, it's Yalba Both. I have it here. Yeah, it's been in a bunch of other SMT games. Sometimes it's called Demiurge. But yeah, it's been in quite a few other ones.
So I'll be honest, this last, and I don't know if I want to call it a dungeon really, but there's like a bunch of floors and a bunch of angels that you have to fight through. I fought a couple of them, and then I was like, you know what? We just gotta run through all this.
We keep trucking.
We gotta run.
This game is long.
I went from the top floor of the Metaverse dungeon to the ending credits within 6 hours.
Nice.
And I blasted through this part.
Trucking.
I did not want to fight any of these enemies. I just wanted to get to the boss. And this boss fight was a doozy.
It's probably one of the more memorable boss fights since Persona 3, just for pure BSness. Like, Persona 3 famously, halfway through, will just one-shot your lead party member, unless you're fully prepared. This one is just a lot of, like, my arm came back, and now it's healing me.
Oh, man.
Great.
So many mechanics. And then, like, each one had, like, immunities or resistances or reflections, and...
Yep.
And then, like, he starts reviving multiple arms back, and...
Just sort of a pain. And by that point, you're just like, look, I sort of want to just beat up a boss and just kind of be done.
Just win.
As good as it is. But I think once you beat that, I really did like the ending. I really did like that all the Phantom Thieves are still together. Like, Morgana is super cool because Morgana gets reborn as just a cat. And it took me a little bit of time to realize that it's the same voice actor and everything, but the portrait changed because it's actually a cat now. Like, it's helping you fix the car. Like, you go on vacation at the end. Like, it's actually a really good ending.
I like that ending because it reminded me of the Oceans. I don't remember which Oceans it was, but maybe it was 11, where he gets out of the jail and they get in that car and leave, and there's that car that was following them or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, they have a car that's tailing them, and Morgana's fixing your vehicle, and he hops back in the car, and they were like, "Did you fix it?" And he's like, "Yeah, I had to borrow a spark plug." Right. And you drive off, and the car that was following you is like, "Oh, why can't it start?"
Yeah, I thought that was good.
So.
Yeah, I know we sort of blew through sort of the back half of that game, especially the last couple dungeons, but a lot of it is just the power of friendship, and let's go through 3 incredibly long dungeons that encompass like the last genuinely 30 hours of that game. So let's we have a little bit of time here, maybe about 5 minutes before we all sort of have to go here. I guess let's start with you, MusiM. Any sort of last thoughts to share about Persona 5?
I feel like the first half of the game is so well detailed and manicured. It really makes me wonder if they just realized they're either running out of budget or time or something. That's
it got Xenogearsed.
Yeah, like the last half of the game doesn't feel thrown together. Like it still feels like decently budgeted. But those first, 3 castles are so tightly knit,
polished.
I think.
Yep.
I agree with you. The only one that kind of sticks out at the tail end that's different is the casino, but I kind of feel like that one was done right for the reasons that
it's
the
pretty
first
small.
ones were.
I mean, it's interesting that the casino is also the only one where the queen of the casino, you don't actually beat her and steal her heart.
Right.
I do feel like that's kind of because that was probably one of the first ones they probably conceptually made, maybe. Maybe they made that dungeon first because that has a big part to do with the rest of the game. So
right.
I feel like maybe they made that dungeon first and then it got stuck into towards the middle of the end.
Yeah. But I know I know the characters in this game aren't quite as memorable as 4 or some of the characters in 3, but I really like all the angles this game took. I love the whole world against these group of kids. I love them fighting corrupt systems. I love all the symbolism they go with in it. You kind of knew from the beginning of the game, I bet the final boss is going to be the guy who got, the main character freaking arrested or whatever.
Right.
He keeps showing up randomly, but
right.
I like the Akechi betrayal. I mean, even if it was obvious, I think that character was an interesting character and had a lot of interesting things to do along the path in terms of being that kind of minor celebrity. But anyway, those are my closing thoughts.
Mina, what about your sort of final thoughts here?
I feel like we would be doing a disservice not mentioning the music while we're recording. The music in this game is really, really, really good. I especially love the Behind the Mask, which is done in several different versions. I really love the rainy nighttime one. Whenever it plays, I think I've sat there and just listened to the song sometimes.
Just hang out for a while.
I love it. And I really, really like what they did with the UI. Very few times have I ever messed around with a menu and thought to myself, like, this is a good menu. Like,
these menus are cool.
Crazy. I love this menu. But everything has such a really good style to it. Even when you start the mission start thing or whatever, and it comes across the screen in some flashy way, like on the blackboard or on the ground. The game had a lot of style, and it shows that like they cared about the little tiny things. What about you, Boston?
I think for me, the thing that says a lot about Persona 5 is I have a hard time choosing whether or not I like this or 4 better. I think 4 and 5 are demonstrably better than 3, but I think both 4 and 5 have things that are bad and good about them, and 5 does so much so well. The big things like the town is really well done. There's a ton of really interesting stuff to do along the 3 or 4 major towns you get to go to, and the small stuff like when you the baton passing system they put, when you move you hit a weakness and you give your turn to someone else and they have that cool high five animation. Like all that stuff is
great.
Yeah, like all that little stuff is great. And there are a lot of missteps with Persona 5. The translation is a little bit lacking, and some of the editing stuff. And we talked about topically there are a bunch of modern day concerns and a little bit of weirdness from some of the confidants, but it's still a really great JRPG, and it's still a really great Persona game at the end of the day. And whether or not it's the best in the series is probably up to your own personal taste, but at the end of the day, it's one of those JRPGs that you can wholeheartedly recommend and say, if you love the genre, this is sort of required reading. Like it's one of those top of the mountain ones that you really need to play, and it's a really great experience. Just maybe set aside genuinely 100 hours for your first playthrough. But Persona 5's great. I'm glad that we finally are able to do a Spoilercast. Sort of had to cap this about an hour and change, mostly due to schedules, but also because we probably could have recorded for about 4 more hours and really get into the minutia of it. But thank you, Mina and MusiM, for carving out some time to talk about this fantastic game. And I don't know what we'll talk about on Spoilercast next, but we will see you all then. Bye.
Bye.
Where have you been? Been searching all along, confessing while and on, without a clue, without a sign, without grasping it. The real question to be asked: where have I been? I'm a sharpshooter at post masquerade, hiding both face and mind, all free for you to draw. I'm a sharpshooter, what else should I be? Please don't take off my mask, revealing dark. Moments of calm,